Welcome to Inside the History, and we're here live on the road on the USS Salem in Quincy, Massachusetts at the former Fore River Shipyard, where both Battleship Massachusetts and Destroyer Kennedy was built. I'm Thomas James Lowney, Gunner's Mate First Class, retired with Dr. John Scholes, and we're here to give you an inside history in both the USS Salem, naval history, and the Fore River Shipyard as well. So we can take you for a walking tour inside the gun turrets, through the magazines, through some of the control spaces, and give you an insight into the history of here at the Fore River Shipyard, where history has been made in Massachusetts and building some of the best ships in the world. And Salem being the last all-gun heavy cruiser built by the United States, and still the last all-gun heavy cruiser still in existence in the world. So, thank you for joining us. We're about to go on board. We'll see you there. We'll give you inside of the history. Thank you. Welcome back to Inside the History here on USS Salem in Turret 2. Welcome back, and thank you for coming in and learning more about the USS Salem. We're down here in center gun pit of Turret 2 to look at the undersides of how this gun system operates. It's mechanically and engineering fascinating. And Tom Lowney here, Gunner's Mate First Class, retired, and Dr. John Scholes as well here to give you the inside of all this. John, if you would.
Yes, we're standing on what's called the pan plate at the bottom of the gun pit. Over my head is the 8-inch 55 Mark 16 gun. And in this structure, we see lots of components that are part of operating and loading the gun, and training and elevating it. And we'll try to point out some of those to you. Above my head here is this casing. And this actually contains the chain for the flexible chain rammer that rams the projectile and powder case in one stroke into the gun. There is another chain for another rammer which runs the empty case tray that pushes the empty powder cases out the front of the mount. You'll notice this pipe here has a swivel joint that connects it to the rest of the turret. That is so the gun can elevate and depress, and this provides a continual supply of hydraulic fluid from an electro-hydraulic motor, which is sitting at my feet, to run the rammer, the transfer trays, and the case ejector, as well as the breech block is run by the same hydraulic system.
Amazing.
As we turn around here, we can now see the cradles that receive the powder case and the projectile. Over on the left side is the cradle that receives the powder case, having come up through the powder hoist. It goes into that cradle, compresses a spring, and there is a latch that holds it in place until it then swings back, following that arc that you see, and latches to the gun slide. At that point, the case is then ejected back into the transfer tray so that can fold in and be rammed. Similarly, there's the cradle for the projectile, having come up the projectile hoist. That also swings back, following the arc, and latches to the slide. Again, there is a spring which ejects the projectile back into the transfer tray. In addition to that, if one is using high-capacity projectiles with nose fuses, there is a fuse setting mechanism in there which will set mechanical time fuses to the proper time to explode the projectile at the proper point, usually designed to be above the target and shower it with fragments.
It was actually part of the hoist, or?
It's actually part of the cradle. It's actually in the cradle. And if you look up there very carefully, there's actually a knob which can be pushed into two positions, one to engage the fuse setting mechanism and the other to retract it, because you don't need it with armor-piercing projectiles, or if you have a steel nose plug
So you'd
in a
have,
high-capacity projectile.
you'd have a gunner in there on command up inside the gun area.
Right,
To
usually
activate.
one of the assistant gun captains would then run up there and do that.
Yeah. As you're firing and running out of the system, be very conscious and aware of movement.
Hopefully, normally, one would prepare and you'd know which kind of projectiles were going to be fired, and that would be part of the setup of the turret while they were getting it ready to go into action. There is also lots of the mechanism to maneuver the turret. You have the elevating mechanism. In this case, it is different than a 16-inch gun. It uses an arc and pinion. You can see the gear teeth of the pinion, of the arc, and it's driven by an electro-hydraulic motor. The turret, of course, has to rotate, so it needs a training motor. This is the training motor for this turret. It's 125 horsepower, and again, it drives through an electro-hydraulic drive that is really one of the most miraculous pieces of machinery you could ever imagine, because it has a feedback mechanism, and it moves the turret to exactly the desired and indicated position by the fire control system. And then, once it gets there, it moves it very slowly and keeps it on the target continuously. And it's incredibly precise in its ability to do that.
In conjunction with the receiver regulators.
Exactly.
Either remotely or locally.
Exactly. And those basically control the hydraulic system, because the motor is actually just continuously putting
Right.
pressure on the hydraulic system. So
'Cause it's
the control mechanism is electro-hydraulic.
Electro-hydraulic, right, same as the 6-inch gun with an A and B end.
Exactly.
Taking electric power, turning it to hydraulic, hydraulic turning it into mechanical.
It's a good example of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, because it
Yeah.
worked.
Fantastic, it hasn't changed in a long time. Yeah, if it
And
don't.
it shouldn't, because
shouldn't, yeah. It's
it works
fantastic.
so well.
And the precision. And these turrets are probably set up the same way, hold down, as well as the 16-inch gun. So if these ever took heavy rolls, the turrets would not bounce in there.
There are hold-down clips on the roller path, and this turret, of course, rotates on the turret foundation bulkhead. It does not rotate on the barbette. That is strictly there for protection. There's one other piece of mechanism that, see, this thing is an elevation buffer. When this gun elevates, when it reaches the limit of its elevation, if it's moving very fast, they don't want it to come into metal-to-metal contact with a big bang and break something. So there is a hydraulic piston in here that softly
Just like your
stops
car.
it at maximum elevation.
Just like a car piston.
Exactly.
Same thing. So that way you don't slam it and jam it as well, because you don't.
And actually, on the end of the slide, there's actually a depression bumper that works exactly the same way. So you can't, when you're lowering the gun, these will depress to 5 degrees below level. Again, it won't slam if it comes to the limit of its depression.
Because you'll have that crazy fire controlman trying to rush to his target fast as possible. These guns are slewed to a director or local control, so you're not physically watching it, you're just telling it what to do, and you hit limits, so that's why you have these things. So self-destruction is not what they want to do.
Yeah, normally in firing these guns, they would be fired in what's called an automatic mode. Basically, information from the director and the fire control computer, stable vertical, would provide the orders on what the train and elevation of the gun should be and how the gun should track the target automatically. Before you can engage that mechanism, however, you have to get the gun roughly aligned with what the proper solution is. And there are actually stations on both sides where there's a pointer and trainer with hand wheels, and they have little dials that they match up to the fire control solution. And once they get it matched, then they say matched, and they go switch to automatic, and they go in automatic, throw a switch, and then from then on, the gun just automatically follows the director's orders and follows the target continuously and automatically. So there's no human error in matching dials or receiving orders.
Right. There's no hesitation.
There's also
It's
no
all-
delay.
Right, yeah, because you have to be instant spontaneous. Once you set this thing in automatic, gunner steps back. He just sits there and watches and makes sure, just in case, because occasionally you might get an error. If you get an error, there's a problem, you don't want a runaway gun turret. It'll slam into stops and buffers. So he's also there monitoring. He's just not dead weight. He's there monitoring, ensuring the system operates properly and functionally, because if we do have runaway, and it has happened, you don't want to have an issue. And also the turrets, the barrels, when they swing, they can actually come in contact with each other. So we, on Wisconsin, we actually did that. We smacked barrels once. It was, to say, quick, entertaining, but realizing the damage that could be done was very dreadful in thought. And you have to be on top of your game. You have to watch and know where things are coming, because it can happen. You would lose a signal, there's battle damage, suddenly the turrets are on their own, and you're in auto mode. It's going to try to hunt for a signal. If you've lost it, you have to be able to switch right back in from automatic to manual, and then continue on. Battle damage can happen at any time.
And just like almost every other system, certainly any system in this ship that matters, it has a backup, and most of the systems have a backup, and many of the backups have a backup.
Redundancy, redundancy, redundancy. You can't overstep it. Did they have a manual mode for train elevation on this?
No. Well, there is a very limited one. There's a little compartment over there that you can actually crawl into, and you can actually manually elevate and train in there. That was
purely for probably maintenance purposes or to align
only,
something for
and
spot
maybe
checks.
an initial alignment, that it was never really used in action.
Yeah, that'd be a bad thing.
Now, the pointer and the trainer could match dials. They had a hydraulic ability to train.
Right, they control the receiver.
But actual manual gearing, which has to be very, very slow to move 451 tons around, it was really never used in action.
No. Just wanted to bring that up because it's kind of an interesting thing, being from my standpoint as a gunner's mate, John, is that sometimes you have to move things and you can't, during different positions of the ship, you're at MCON, or you don't want to secure the whole system and draw power because the ship's running on ship's power, and if they're at limited power resource and you're sitting there like an idiot trying to light off to do maintenance, you've got to get permission so that way the power draw will not damage it. And if you could do it manually and not get anyone else involved to get your work done, so much the better. So it's curiosity for me, because like I said, this is not my gun system. Unfortunately, this was decom before I came into service, but it's very similar to the 16-inch and throw-ins from the 5-inch 54, Mark 42s and 45s. So it's really, seeing this, John, and getting your information is really outstanding to see, because there's other gunners mates out there in the active fleet who are the 5-inch 55, 5-inch 54 Mark 45s, and I believe it's a 50 now. And some of these are derived directly from systems like this in the progressive history of gun.
Absolutely. This is really the father of all the automated gun mounts that the U.S. Navy has. It's also, interestingly enough, probably the best one they ever built, because it was the most reliable, and needless to say, as an 8-inch caliber, it was by far the most powerful.
Tonnage on station on time, I like it. Well, that pretty much takes care of us here. And I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. Thank you, John, for giving us the insight here in the gun pit, which normally people don't see because it's a mess and it's a safety hazard to get to, but we've given you some insight here into the history. And I want to thank the guys from the Salem Museum here in Quincy for allowing us to come in and film and show you the history that you normally can't see. And hopefully we'll get some more stuff out to you here shortly. Again, thank you. We'd like you to like, share, and subscribe. And if you get a chance, come support the museum. And if you'd like to volunteer, come on in. Go through the website and contact the people that can help you out. And we'd love to have more help here and down in Battleship, Massachusetts as well. Thank you very much for your time. We'll see you back out there. I'm Tom Lowney, Gunner's Mate First Class Retired, Dr. John Scholes, and we thank you. And
we'd like to thank also all the people from the Massachusetts who came here to help us produce this. We're glad to show off our ship to them. And please, if you get a chance, come see this USS Salem. And also go see the USS Massachusetts. Because when you see both, you'll get more information and more insight out of seeing both of them.
and you can buy tickets to see them both. We have packages available. Just go through the website or give them a call down at the store, and we'll see if we can hook you up and give you a good weekend tour. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. I'm Tom Lowney. Have a good day.